Welcome to Lightning Talks for Legal Innovators. Thank you all for being here. This is a very special edition because tomorrow marks the 1 year anniversary of the start of this series. Gavel's founder and CEO, Dorna Moini, was our first ever speaker on June 30th, 2022. So a quick shout out and thank you to Dorna for believing in this idea and for everyone who has been joining us every month since the beginning. So my name is Brittany Hernandez, and I am your host for this Lightning Talk series in partnership with Gavel. I'm a lawyer, a veteran, a Gavel expert, and professional no-code, low-code developer, and the founder of Premium Academy, where we have Gavel certification courses, as well as courses in software, Airtable, Go Full Page, and more. I'm also very privileged to be Gavel's global ambassador to law schools and the program director and senior instructor for their Law Students in Legal Tech Access to Justice Fellowship. Today, one of our very own Law Students in Legal Tech Fellows and Hackathon winners, Max Ranzato, will discuss the topic, building legal tech products with no-code solutions, empowering copyright holders through Gavel. Feel free to post your questions in the chat as you think of them, and Max will pick them up once he concludes. After questions, I'm going to do a quick wrap up, after which you're free to stay on the call for an optional 5 minutes of speed networking, where I'll invite a few people to introduce themselves for about 1 minute each. You can let me or Trisha know in the chat if you'd like to introduce yourself during that portion of the call. I'd now like to introduce you to today's speaker. Max is a two-time winner of the Law Students in Legal Tech Access to Justice Fellowship Hackathon competition, which was held in early May of this year. After joining the cohort in late March, when others started in January, Max was able to catch up on all 12 weeks worth of assignments and course content just in time to submit an app in the hackathon competition, where he took home a coveted cash prize of $1,000 for the category Most Sophisticated Build for his copyright infringement checker. He also won a swag prize for tying for first in the category of Most Creative Marketing Campaign. The hackathon judges said of Max's app, from Dorna's side, she said, "Complicated concepts are distilled down to the main points and have clear but not overwhelming question prompts." From my side, I said, not only did this app utilize many of the various advanced logic and elements that we learned during the fellowship, this app shows a mastery of the subject matter and an understanding of the potential there is to create genuine legal products, not just document automations. And finally, from Tracy, she said this app would be a huge help for someone with questions about copyright infringement and is written and organized in a way that a layperson could easily understand. 5 stars. So he's going to be going over this particular app with us today and some of the other ways that he's using Gavel. To top it all off, Max was simultaneously participating in the fellowship and finishing his last semester at New York Law School, where he was on law review and in the top 15% of his class. He is currently studying to sit for the Uniform Bar examination in New York next month. He's here after I talked to him yesterday or the other day, and he's literally studying for the bar at the same time as being on our show today. So thanks for being here, Max. He also previously worked as a student attorney and research assistant at his school's patent clinic. And he has experience working on complex commercial litigation, as well as cryptocurrency, trademark, and corporate matters as a legal intern at Morrison Tenenbaum and the Office of Disciplinary Affairs. So thank you so much for being with us today, Max. The floor is now yours.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me today. Yeah, taking a break from the bar to be here is much more exciting than what was normally going on. Before I share my screen and get into kind of the ideas specifically of what I generated in the app, I just wanted to give a preface of how I was interested in intellectual property as a whole and just kind of how I was able to blend my interests with Brittany's course teaching me how to use Gavel, specifically with access to justice issues. So I've always been interested in intellectual property. I produced music in college and then would sell that music to other artists. So that was my first instance of licensing agreements. And I started to notice that a lot of bedroom producers, as they're called, lack legal knowledge to protect themselves with licensing their music. And so eventually when I made this decision to go to law school, I really wanted to focus on intellectual property, copyrights, but then also got a passion for trademarks and patents during my time in the clinic. And then, so I've taken a lot of intellectual property courses, a copyright course, and then enrolling into Brittany's course, the access to justice, really, the numbers that I learned in that course were really astounding of how many people don't have access to justice compared with how many people have an action that could be brought. And the discrepancy between access to funds and resources versus how many people are actually facing trouble was astonishing to me. And I really found a passion for trying to help provide people with legal tools or legal resources that would cost them nothing. And then the course kind of focused on like housing, disabilities, and funding for veterans, and a lot of the classic access to justice issues that we normally face in society. But I saw kind of a gap to be had for intellectual property issues, and that shouldn't necessarily be forgotten about as current legal issues. And numerous people can face these types of issues, and it might not be categorized as an access to justice issue because we tend to think of your pro bono, law clinics that provide domestic violence and other types of services in that way to help people outside of those struggles. But when I originally went to the Gavel marketplace and started looking for apps and niche areas to fill, I saw a huge lack in intellectual property related apps that where people were building. So I thought that this could be an excellent opportunity to not only showcase my skills, but also fill that need for intellectual property tools. So I could share my screen now and then show you just kind of the steps I used to develop and think about the idea, and then show my Notion page of planning the specific pages of the app. And then at the end, I can show you the app in general and what the overall goal was. So I'll share my screen. Can you see the screen? So
Yep.
first, even before getting into the Gavel notes, I went to ChatGPT, which some of you may be familiar with, some you may not, but basically used it to bounce ideas up off of them to see what areas of legal aid could be applicable to the situation, and then what could I build. So just come up with 5 very, very simple apps for free service to indigent clients, and got 5 and then or 4, and then started seeing what could be done and what did I have the skills really to do, and how much outside research was going to be needed because there was a time crunch to develop the app. So made more financial planning, health assessment, immigration eligibility, all of these different ideas were being generated, but they all required some sort of outside information to be pulled in, or like a calculator of some sort. And I just wasn't in the time to generate like a calculator for personal injury assessments, and wasn't that knowledgeable about personal injury law. So then I went into music law and saw, could we do contract review, or a copyright infringement assessment was one that like piqued my interest right there, because having taken copyright law, I knew that the elements, and it's kind of like a factor list to determine whether or not you would have even a viable claim, not even just a successful claim, just whether or not there was enough to potentially bring a claim or stop someone. So then I said, we're just going to do copyright infringement, and start telling me what kind of information I should keep my eye out for. It's interesting to note, my original idea was a small business legal compliance app, but that required a lot of tax identification numbers, employee identification numbers to pull records. And again, just wasn't in the time to be able to do that. So just ended up watering it down to something that maybe 5 or 6 factors or checklist item that someone could easily determine on their own whether or not something was applicable in their case. So then after determining what the idea was going to be, I went over to Notion, and I really like using Notion because anything I type in here, the formatting is automatically kept in Gavel. So all the bullets and the bolding, they'll automatically make sure that it's bolded as well using specific code, I guess, like slashes and parentheses. So I had to write out what the problem I was trying to face or solve, really. And so obviously access to justice, but then how many people deal with copyright infringement issues, and how many people lack the know-how to put a stop to that without getting an attorney involved. Because a lot of people use an attorney to register a copyright, but then to enforce it would obviously cost a lot more money to employ that attorney again, when there might not be any need to get the attorney involved and to get an order to cease and desist really involved, when a normal layperson can send their own cease and desist letter without it being a legal piece of enforcement to put someone on notice. And then of course, if they don't listen to you, then you can employ a lawyer, but there could be a free step in between before employing a lawyer further. So I needed something that was easy to access, easy to understand, because copyright law is very hard or very confusing to a normal person. There's a lot of factors and a lot of nuanced words that can really sway a case one way or another. So needed to make it easily approachable, and then also give a lot of help text in normal people language so they would even understand what the question was trying to get at. So for the solution, it needed to be, again, user friendly, and it would ultimately provide people with an end result, not just letting them know if they had a potential claim for copyright infringement, but at the very end, it would auto populate a cease and desist letter for that user to then send to the alleged infringer. So everything and further steps were all housed within one app, which I thought made it even more beneficial. So they didn't have to go to some legal document generator and figure out how to make a cease and desist letter themselves and what information was important and what was not, since I've seen numerous examples before and written letters to clients in my internships. I knew how to make the letter forceful, but not too legal jargon filled, and not really stepping over the line of getting into where you need a lawyer to enforce this versus just a letter you can send someone. So I came up with the app for the infringement checker, and then added in the cease and desist letter. So then I used Notion to kind of plan out how it was going to look and how each page would work with each other. Because if you just start writing gavel, it can kind of get confusing because you're creating pages and questions. And then once you make a new page, you need to make sure all the previous stuff connected, that there are kick out pages if someone inputted the wrong answer. So it really helps to plan it out first and really break down what's essential and what's not. So I knew page one was collecting user data. And I also built this in mind that if a law firm purchased this from me, or I gave it to them, that it would be important for them to collect user data to then connect to their customer management software and other marketing tools, or however they send newsletters. It's important to collect the data. So we got their name, address, phone type, phone, email, and the type of work. In the app, I'll show you there's different types to click, such as art, music, video, sculpture. That would also allow a law firm to categorize all of their new incoming clients into the types of work to make it easily accessible for the lawyers too. Then we needed info about the copyright. Do you even own do you have a valid copyright? Because if not, you need to go get one, and then you can send the cease and desist letter. But if you do, then you could go on to the next step. So that was really important, because if the answer is no right away, then there's no need to continue to the cease and desist letter part. Why put them through all this work when they can't really do anything yet? So needed to first determine what kind of infringement happened. And I give help text to explain what reproduction means, preparing a derivative work, distribution, all these types of the rights that are held with a copyright holder. If none of these happened, then we'd get a kickout page saying, okay, well, if none of these happen, then you definitely don't have infringement. But if you believe yes, then we'll go on to the next page. And then I broke down, without getting into the nitty gritty of copyright law, the different factors that are needed to essentially that will come into play in a case are explained. And then I provide a lot of help text to show and give examples of other instances of infringement to show, so a normal person can easily compare their situations and move forward with the questionnaire. And of course, throughout this entire thing, I knew that, of course, someone filling this out is going to answer the question swaying in their favor, but that's okay, because we're not really getting into a case here. We just need something for the very first part to let someone know, hey, I believe that you're infringing on my copyright with XYZ. If you think I'm wrong, we'll figure it out afterwards. But this should put someone on enough notice that there could be a pending claim in the future, even, because given this, I think that there could be. And then also, because this would be integrated into an attorney's customer management, they would have all of this in their database already. So if the person that they sent a letter to denied the claim, then you could contact the attorney. They would already have some idea about all of the instances of all of the factors that the lawyer would need to find in order to enforce this right. Then the lawyer could make a judgment call on how much did someone inflate their assumption of substantial similarity, and then make a more niche determination of individual elements, as opposed to starting completely from scratch with someone that just wants to enforce their copyright. The research involved and determining finding the other work and everything that goes with along that. So I provide some examples, thought of some examples I could show someone. So I will just go to the app and show. No, not what I want. Go away. Oh, I X'd out of it. Sorry, Brittany.
That's okay. You're doing great.
Yeah, let me just get a new page going. So I use ChatGPT a lot with a lot of questions that I had. I really, promote it to whomever needs it. It's extremely helpful to bounce ideas off of and really just see, are there any holes in my idea? Because a lot of the times when I come up with an idea, I think it's the best idea ever. And of course, I'm not thinking of little holes to poke in it, but having a unbiased computer software do it for me really helps. So I'm just gonna run the app and then share my screen again. Give me 1 second. Sorry, Brittany.
You're doing fine. I think it's interesting because I just was talking I did an episode of The Slot and we were talking about ChatGPT. So we'll get to that in the question.
Yeah, sure. So here's the homepage of the app that I built, the copyright infringement checker. It starts, of course, with instructions and like a welcome page, and I definitely use ChatGPT as well to kind of make what I wanted to say more welcoming. As lawyers, we tend to be very strict with our words, or sometimes very forward with our words, and that might not be the most welcoming to some random person that stumbled upon an app and they want it to seem easy and useful and not that scary, that doing something like this is the be all end all or something. Like it's just for information purposes and for the person's personal use. So it even says that this is for information purposes only, and it doesn't really create an attorney client relationship. So if someone that purchased this app and had it on their website is just a tool to generate new business, it could be helpful just to spread the word and expand their IP practice without hiring new attorneys to go out and search for business. And so in the start page, it just asks what kind of work you're trying to protect. So if it's musical, and then if you think someone, I don't know, reproduced your song, then we'd hit continue and go to the next. So next, it lets you know straight away what this entire thing will even attempt to do. If the other party actually copied, and if they copied a substantial amount, if they actually took it, then the questionnaire recognizes that and doesn't necessarily go on to the next factors. So do you believe the same characteristics exist? So if you hit yes, good. But if you hit no, then we need to find out the other factors that involve copyright infringement, because a lot of the times people just would hear a similar song and think that they have a claim. But if they didn't have access to your work, then it becomes substantially harder. But so if you hit no, then the continue page would send you to a kickout page saying, you need to determine if they had access. But if you said yes, because it's on Spotify and you know that they listen to your music, or probably just being on Spotify might be enough depending on how big the song is. And then if you believe they're substantially similar, you hit yes and go to the next page. All of these have help text too. It says you do not need to prove that the other person actually saw your work or had a physical copy, just that it was reasonably possible. So that's exactly what I just said. And so someone would be able to look at that help text and then see, oh, okay, so I don't need to say that they actually took my book. They maybe saw it in a bookstore, or it gets a little easier to determine that. So it's like, yay, you have options. You've met the basic criteria for a potential copyright infringement claim. Of course, it gets way more complicated from there, but at the very least, you think that you have hit those characteristics. So if you, again, like I said before, if you don't have a valid registered copyright, then there's no need to proceed further. You should go get a valid copyright. So if I hit yes, it'll bring me to the next steps. But if I hit no, it lets you know that in order to enforce these rights, you should register your work. So if you hit this button, it would bring you to the registration form, and you'd be able to easily do that without necessarily getting an attorney. A lot of people file for copyrights on their own. It's not that hard of a process, and this would give instructions on how to do that, and even has a save progress link. So as soon as they do that, it can be by the day, they come back and then see what next steps they might have. But if I hit yes, then it's important to think, where is the infringement happening? Because there might be other company policies in place that could put an end to this before needing a whole letter to send to someone, finding where they live or their address or their email. So if it's a song or a movie or a show, if you think it's taking place on YouTube, if it is, yes, then YouTube has a copyright infringement process in place with a form. So you would click this and just go straight to YouTube and let them know, and then you could proceed from there. If it's taking place through Google, if you think someone's taking your website or your works and putting them onto their website, yes, it brings you right to Google's policy and procedure for filling out a copyright infringement for Google. So you would, again, there's other people in place besides getting a lawyer, because you might have contacted a lawyer. They said they'll let you know, they'll bill you for time, end up finding that it's on YouTube and just fill out a form. And now you owe him or her money for that research that they did to even determine all of this. So that might be a waste. I mean, a good attorney might tell you, like, it's okay, I found it on YouTube, you don't need to pay me for it. But a lot of attorneys might not, especially in a world where sometimes indigent clients get taken advantage of because of their precarious situation. So this can just help, again, an individual skip all of the steps before going to a lawyer. And then, so if none of that is true, is it someone that can be contacted? Email, mail, fax, phone call? Do you have any contact information whatsoever? It could be a username. If you say no, like, I mean, that one's pretty obvious, but some people might not think so. If I want to send a letter, you have to know who to send it to or where to send it to. And if you don't, then obviously you can't send a letter to that person. They won't receive it. So you hit yes. And then the last one is, do you want to generate a cease and desist letter? Send that party. And it lets someone know that it doesn't automatically signify a lawsuit is coming. It more so puts someone on notice that someone might have a claim against you, or that they're just letting you know that they think that you're using their work improperly. And so it's not an automatic lawsuit. If they say no, it's not like you're now roped into some litigation. Again, it's just putting parties on notice of the overall status of what's happening. And you're just trying to do what you can at this moment to protect your work. So hit yes. So this is where you would end up inputting all of your information that would get auto-populated into the cease and desist letter. The next page is the same, but for the other person's information. And we also take into account if they're an LLC or a corporation to determine who you're going to contact. I won't necessarily bother going to the next page or filling out just my information. The general idea is that you get a basic cease and desist letter with all of this information auto-populated in using the Gavel add-in through Word. So Word allows you to add your Gavel workflow and the information that comes in right into the Word document, all formatted the way that you set it up. And so the heading, all their first name, their last name, or even their title, like Mr., Mrs., Doctor, and then last name. So it's automatically set up in whatever format you want. It would let the person, you describe your work, which would then be put into the document. Where can your work be found? If it's a link or a physical place, again, that would specifically put the receiving person on notice of where your work can be found, what the work is, and where their work is also being found. If it's the same location or a different location, to, again, put someone on notice. It's all about just putting someone on notice of this, and then we can proceed to the next step involving a lawyer. So that's basically it for this app that I submitted. I use Gavel all the time. Even in my regular studying life, I recently made a interactive outline for criminal law and criminal procedure for the bar, and just thought it was more accessible than like 150 pages of textbook notes. I can make it all this big and just have individual drop downs all to my liking. So it's been really helpful. I've used it for a few other instances too, making tests, questionnaires. It's a super intuitive product. It's very simple to use. And I really thank Brittany for just being such an amazing teacher and teaching me these skills. I had always thought that coding was never going to happen for me. I thought freshman year of college, intro to comp sci, everyone would already know how to code and that it was only going to get harder. And it wasn't necessarily an intro, so it kind of skipped by me. But I've always been entrepreneurial and innovative thinker, I'd like to say, for myself, and how can I get these ideas out and to something workable? And that's exactly what Brittany said for herself. She has all these ideas, but no way to make them without a computer science person or a coder, but then there are so many tools with low code, no code skills that just use basic if then statements that can really make something like this entire app without having no skill in it before. So the whole program is amazing. Brittany is amazing, and the whole Gavel team is, and I thank them for this opportunity.
Thank you so much, Max. I'm blushing. We thank you so much for showing us what you made and for taking the time to kind of explain all the way from the beginning. That's something that I try to help people with that early stage development, coming up with the idea at all. So it was really interesting to see how you utilize ChatGPT and made it to where you were able to then take that to Notion, flesh it out a little bit more. And then, like you said, you can take the formatting, drop it straight from there into Gavel. And obviously you can do that within Gavel as well. But to kind of see how these different tools are interacting with each other is really fascinating. And I love that you mentioned how you're using it in different ways. We do have a few minutes for questions. If anyone in the audience has a question, please raise your hand or unmute if you would like to ask Max a question. I have one for him if nobody else has one, but I want to give a second just in case. Hi, Dorna. Nice to see you. Do you have a question for Max?
I do actually. I was gonna,
Yay.
Max, this is really wonderful to see. It's incredible to see how comprehensive the tool is, and congratulations on your win.
Thank you.
I was just wondering what's next for you. What are you gonna do with this platform next? Because it looks like it's a pretty robust tool.
Yeah, sure. So right now the plan after the bar is to pick up work immediately with gig law. And I'm sure you guys can get some background on Haley and what she does with gig law, but they specifically have Gavel oriented projects. So that's really the goal right now, is to find ways to work with Gavel on a daily basis. And I am considering offers from other firms, but I really want my focus and passions to be aligned with legal tech. And I want to work eventually for a firm that is legal tech oriented and notices the trend of traditional law work kind of being phased out and being not as scalable. So legal tech is really the way for small firms to scale their business at a low cost. So I want to be the person that helps them do that, and helping clients that don't have access to legal help.
Amazing, super helpful. And just for anyone who doesn't already know, gig law is one of our Gavel experts. And so it sounds like if you liked what you saw here today, Max might be someone you could work with in the future.
Absolutely. And Nectarius, do you want to give us your question?
Sure. Thank you, Max. I just had a question. I know that there was some type of like a paywall, I think, tool for Gavel questionnaires. I don't have any experience with it. I was wondering if if you or Brittany does, if you could speak about that. In particular, I think it hooks up with Stripe, if I'm correct. But I was wondering if you could also address the specific question of whether you could connect it to other like payment merchant providers.
Brittany, you want to answer that one?
I'll jump in just quickly. So Max and the rest of the fellows were given a limited version of the particular platform for students. So it doesn't have the Stripe paywall integration, but a full plan does have a Stripe paywall integration. As far as connecting with other types of payment providers, I think Dorna can speak to this as well. But what I found too is that you can make it to where the link is the redirect after a payment process flow, like when the person submits, it directs them to the workflow. So I have seen that before as well. So you're making it to where they pay and then they're taken directly to the workflow if it's some other provider outside of Stripe.
So that would be like a payment before they even start the workflow, as opposed to like through Gavel, you could set it up like just right before they submit, after they complete the questionnaire, they could pay. Which
Right.
I think that might work better from an intuitive point of view. I never tried it though.
Right. And you can make it to where it's not the first page, like it's not the first page. So you can give some explanation first so the person can see. Some people put videos ahead of the paywall so they can take a look at what's going on inside the workflow before they pay for it. So you can kind of see where you would want to place that Stripe paywall and customize it for yourself.
Okay, cool. But through Gavel specifically, you're not sure if we could use other providers besides Stripe, or is that a possibility?
it's just not a native integration. Stripe is a native integration where you would be able to link your secret key and your publicly directly inside of Gavel. So the other providers would be ones that you would need to find just a small workaround.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
That's a great question. Thank you so much. So I'm going to go ahead and start wrapping us up. Thank you so much, Max, for sharing this with us. Not everyone, to be honest, not everyone is willing to show their back end of what they're working on. A lot of people want to keep it close to the chest, and that's completely fine. But I do think it helps. That's one of the reasons why we started this a year ago, which is that we can do some practice sharing, which I think is really important. So before we do wrap up, I just wanted to let you know about a few announcements from Max. Feel free to connect with him on LinkedIn or via email. That's written here. And he's really interested, like he said, in pursuing a position where he can utilize his skills in Gavel and just legal tech generally. So if you or someone you know is interested, please do get in touch with him. He was able to secure that guaranteed paid position with Gig Law from participating and winning the hackathon competition. So from my side, I will be hosting the live session of the Core 3 cohort for Comedian Academy's Gavel certification courses that I developed in partnership with Gavel expert Megan Sawtell. We'll be kicking off Silver Week today, right after this. So you can join us by enrolling either in the Silver course alone or enrolling in the full basics Silver and Gold bundle. And you'll see the Zoom link as the top lesson in your course player. So we have new cores that start every 6 weeks and run for 4 weeks each. From the Gavel side, the bundles feature has been released to a small set of beta testers. So if you'd like to test this feature and give some feedback to the team, you can reach out to Dorna at dorna@gavel.io. And there's been a change to the client portals from more of an infrastructure perspective. So there wouldn't be anything that your clients would necessarily notice, but you can now preview the what the client portal looks like as an admin or builder by going to just put your subdomain.gavel.io and then /portal. So it's always fun to play with that. Just some quick reminders. You can always add some feature requests on our wish list. You can contact support. There's a Calendly page that you can book a support call. We have a very supportive Slack community, and you can also have your apps like the one that Max showed us here placed on the marketplace. And as the question was mentioning, you can have those be paid versus free. So we host these lightning talks on the last Thursday of each month, except when they coincide with the holiday. The next one will take place on July 27th at 9:15 a.m. Pacific time. We're very excited to be hearing from Gareth Pronovost, who is the owner of Gap Consulting, a leading consulting firm that helps clients from small businesses to Disney, Showtime, and Ticketmaster incorporate no-code tools to streamline their processes and scale. Gareth will be discussing the topic, Turn Your No-Code Skills into a 7-Figure Empire, How I Did It in 36 Months. So I'm very excited for this one. You can register for that in future lightning talks on the Eventbrite page. So that concludes the main portion of our lightning talk for today. A big thank you to Max for sharing his insights with us. We're going to be transitioning now into an optional 5 minutes of speed networking. So if you need to go, no problem. For those of you that want to stay, thank you so much. And we'll stay on the call now.